Welcome to this model. In this model, let us speak about attenuator and power amplifiers. A separate power amplifier provides the output power for each transponder channel. So each power amplifier is preceded by an attenuator. This is necessary to permit the input drive to each power amplifier to be adjusted to the desired level. The attenuator has a fixed section and a variable section. The fixed attenuation is needed to balance out the variations in the input attenuation so that each transponder channel has the same nominal attenuation and the necessary adjustments being made during assembly. The variable attenuation is needed to set the level as required for different types of service. Because this variable attenuator adjustment is operational requirement, it must be under the control of the ground, TT and C station. And now let us see about the power amplifiers. Traveling wave tube amplifiers are widely used in transponders to provide the final output power required to the transmit antenna. Here you can see the diagram of a traveling wave tube and its power supplies. In the traveling wave tube, an electron beam gun assembly consisting of a heater, cathode and focusing electrodes is used to form the electron beam, as you can see in this figure. A magnetic field is required to confine the beam to travel along inside the wire helix. For higher power tubes, such as might be used in ground stations, the magnetic field can be provided by means of a solenoid and DC power supply. The comparatively large size and high power consumption of the solenoids make them unsuitable for use of broad satellites, and lower power TWTs are used which employ permanent magnet focusing. The RF signal to be amplified is coupled to the helix at the end nearest to the cathode and sets up a traveling wave along the helix. The electric field of the wave will have a component along the axis of the helix. In some regions, this field will decelerate the electrons in the beam, and in others, it will accelerate them so that electron bunching occurs along the beam. The average beam velocity, which is determined by the DC potential of the tube collector, is kept slightly greater than the phase velocity of the wave along the helix. Under these conditions, an energy transfer takes place, kinetic energy in the beam being converted to potential energy in the wave, and the wave actually will travel around the helical path at close to the speed of light, but it is the axial component of the wave velocity which interacts with the electron beam. This component is less than the velocity of light approximately in the ratio of the helix pitch to circumference. Because of this effective reduction in phase velocity, this helix is referred to as a slow wave structure. The advantage of the TWT over the other types of tube amplifiers is that it can provide amplification over a wide variety of bandwidth, and the input levels to the TWT must be carefully controlled, however, to minimize the effects of certain forms of distortion. The worst of these results from the nonlinear transfer characteristics of the traveling wave tube, and you can see in this figure. So this is the power transfer characteristics of a traveling wave tube. The saturation point is used as a 0 dB reference for both input and output rate. So at low input pass, the output input power relationship is linear, that we see in the graph. That is a given decibel range change in the input power will produce the same decibel change in the output power. At higher power output inputs, the output power saturates, the point of maximum power output being known as saturation point. The saturation point is a very convenient reference point, and the input and output quantities are usually referred to it. The linear region of the TWT is defined as the region bound by the thermal noise limit at the low end and by what is termed as 1 dB compression point and the upper end. Okay, so this is the point where the actual transfer curve drops 1 dB below the extrapolated straight line, and the selection of the operating point on the transfer characteristics will be considered, but first the phase characteristics will have to be described now. The absolute time delay between the input and output signals at a fixed input level is generally not significant. However, at the higher input levels, when more of the beam energy is converted to the output power, the average beam velocity is reduced and therefore the delay time is increased. Since phase delay is directly proportional to the time delay, this results in a phase shift which varies with the input level. Denoting the phase shift at saturation by theta s and in general theta, the phase difference relative to the saturation is theta minus theta s. Okay. And this is plotted in this diagram as a function of the input power. Thus, if the input signal power level changes, phase modulation will result, and this being termed as AM/PM conversion. The slope of the phase shift characteristics give the phase modulation coefficient in degrees in per decibel. The curve of the slope as a function of input power is also sketched in this diagram. Frequency modulation is usually employed in analog satellite communication circuits. However, unwanted amplitude modulation can occur from filtering, which takes place prior to the traveling wave tube input. The AM process converts the unwanted amplitude modulation to phase modulation, which appears as noise on the FM carrier. Okay, where only a single carrier is present, it may be passed through a hard limiter before being amplified in the traveling wave tube. The hard limiter is a circuit which clips the carrier amplitude close to the zero baseline to remove any amplitude modulation. The FM is preserved in the zero crossover point and is not affected by the limiting. A TWT may also be called on to amplify two or more carriers simultaneously, and this being referred to as multi-carrier operation. The AM/PM conversion is then a complicated function of the carrier signal. But in addition, the nonlinear transfer characteristics introduces a more serious form of distortion known as intermodulation distortion. So the nonlinear transfer characteristics may be expressed as a Taylor series expansion, which relates the input and output voltages. The output voltage can be given by E0 is equal to A into EI plus B EI square plus C EI cube and so on, where the A, B, C are coefficients which depends on the transfer characteristics, and E0 is the output voltage and EI is the input voltage, which consists of some of the individual carriers. The third order term, that is C into EI the whole cube, this and the higher order odd power terms give rise to intermodulation products, but usually only the third order contribution is significant. Suppose multiple carriers are present separated from one another by delta F, and considering specifically the carriers at frequencies F1 and F2, these will give rise to frequencies 2 F2 minus F1 and 2 F1 minus F2 as a result of the third order term. So because F2 minus F1 is equal to delta F, these two intermodulation products can be written as F2 plus delta F and F1 minus delta F respectively. Thus, the intermodulation products fall on neighboring carrier frequencies, as you can see in this diagram. Similar intermodulation products will arise from the other carrier pairs, and when the carriers are modulated, the intermodulation distortion appears as noise across the transponder frequency band. The intermodulation noise will appear in the frequency band. In order to reduce these intermodulation distortion, the operating point of the TWT must be shifted closer to the linear portion of the curve. Okay, that you can see in this figure. The reduction in input power being referred to as input back off. When multiple carriers are present, the power output around saturation and for any carrier is less than that achieved for the single carrier operation. And the input back off is the difference in decibels between the carrier input at the operating point and the saturation input which would be required for single carrier operation. The output back off is the corresponding drop in output power. Output back off values are always stated in decibels relative to the saturation point. As a rule of thumb, output back off is about 5 dB less than the input back off. You can see in this diagram. The need to incorporate a back-off significantly reduces the channel capacity of the satellite link because of the reduced carrier to noise ratio received at the ground station. Allowance for back-off in the link budget calculation has to be dealt with. Thank you.